I can't say I'm surprised that Colin Kaepernick has come out smearing Independence Day. I think it's part of his shtick. My opinion is this guy has made a business. He's made a career out of just ragging on this country. And I got to say, I completely disagree with him, but I will empathize a little bit with his perspective. I want to talk about this because what I want to do is I want to show you what he said. I want to show you what another progressive individual said. And I want to talk to you about what the 4th of July means to me. Because I love this day. I love the 4th of July. Mostly just it was a fun day to hang out with my friends. We're going to fire up the grill, have some burgers, skateboard, just chill. It's a good Saturday. Pretty cool that happens on a Saturday. And then at night, you sit back, your dog gets scared, and the sky explodes. How fun is that? Well, Colin Kaepernick doesn't seem to agree. He tweeted, "Black people have been dehumanized, brutalized, criminalized, and terrorized by America for centuries, and are expected to join your commemoration of independence while you enslaved our ancestors. We reject your celebration of white supremacy and look forward to liberation for all." You see, Colin Kaepernick actually, the first thing I'll say is, I respect his point. This country, even when it declared independence, still had slavery. Now, how can that make sense? You're saying that we're going to be an independent nation for the people, by the people, but a good portion of the people are property? Not okay. I certainly think so. That's horrifying. But when I see that, it says to me that our schools do a poor job of explaining what Independence Day was really about. And it was about Enlightenment ideals and an ideological revolution that the government was supposed to be was supposed to be of the people, for the people, and by the people, and not by divine mandate. In fact, I think one of the funniest ways to actually explain, to exemplify what this is that Monty Python bit with King Arthur and the anarcho-syndicalist commune, which I'm sure many of you have seen. And if you haven't, it's just hilarious, and I recommend you check it out. And it's actually from a long time ago. But you see, King Arthur trots up to some peasant workers who he says, "I'm your king. Tell me who lives here." And they're like, "I didn't vote for you." And he goes, "Well, you don't vote for a king." And he said, "Well, then how do you become king?" And he says, "The Lady of the Lake, bestowed upon me Excalibur, signifying by divine providence that I would be the king of the Britons." Yeah, that was like the idea a long time ago, that somebody was in charge because God said so. But something changed, and there was an ideological revolution. In fact, that's actually how it's described academically. It was a political and ideological revolution. A whole bunch of new ideas emerged. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. But it was a spark. It was the spark that lit the match that burned to bring about true freedom. You see, what ended up happening is, under this idea that the government must represent the people, slavery could not exist. It did, though, and seems to make no sense, right? Well, in less than 100 years, we set about killing each other in massive numbers in this country to end slavery. Certainly some fought to keep it, although there are other ideological issues pertaining to the Civil War having to do with states' rights, secession from the Union. The true catalyst really was slavery. And Grant, as well as many other abolitionists, said the Union must survive, and thus slavery must come to an end. Frederick Douglass, I'm probably going to mess up his quote, but famously said something to the effect of, "Will you stand up to the words of your own Constitution?" It was true. The ideological revolution that occurred on 1776, and that had been budding up for a long time, wasn't fully realized. And even into the 1900s wasn't fully realized that if the government is supposed to represent the people, then people must be equal under the law in all respects. And even to this day, this country has set about granting those freedoms. So it's funny when I see points like this. Now, this is from Cameron Kasky. I think Cameron's actually an all right dude. Cam, I think you're an all right dude. He tweeted out this: "I just realized today's the day America screws itself over harder than ever because all of your dumb A's at the beach giving each other the virus while celebrating how a bunch of slave owners defeated Jonathan Groff." Well, I look, for my criticisms of even Colin Kaepernick, I'm not trying to be mean, So I respectfully reply to Cam with this: "My family celebrates the ideological revolution that government was for the people and not by divine mandate. They celebrate our civil rights victories under this framework that brought the end of miscegenation laws, finally granting them equality under the law." I brought this up in my main channel segment, so if you're hearing it twice, forgive me. If you haven't seen it, go to timcast.net. It went up at 4. But my family fled their home country to the United States. This is my understanding of it, at least what my family tells me. It's been a long time. They fled in the early 1900s because of horrifying things that were happening. And they came to a country where they knew they would be an extreme minority. And they knew that this country overwhelmingly favored white people. There was no such thing as civil rights law. The amazing thing about this country and the framework for which it stands, that the government is for the people, of the people, and by the people, means that amendments must be made to accommodate the people so they are represented. And that still happens to this day. When my family came here, they knew they would be an extreme minority. Then they had children. One of those children married a white man, and that was illegal. Miscegenation laws existed. So even then, choosing love in the face of oppression. But guess what? It is that ideological framework of the people, for the people, by the people that ultimately lended itself to the 1964 Civil Rights Act and to Loving v. Virginia 1967. America is awesome, man. It is an ideological revolution about freedom and liberty and self-respect. Which brings me now to literally the Wikipedia page for the American Revolution, which lays this all out very simply, and people just don't know. Now, the screen is cut off. I'm sorry, but I'll read this. I really do want to read this and talk about the birth of republicanism and liberalism and the corruption of the terms in modern political rhetoric. People associate liberalism with leftism, and that is wrong. Most people in this country fully respect the idea of liberalism. But because the left has been viewed as liberal, and they use that word interchangeably, people are now confused as to what it really means. So I bring you now to what the American Revolution truly was. And although it wasn't fully realized, look, when you create a framework on paper, you still have to build it. And we're still on this journey. Don't stop now. Things are going great. They say the American Enlightenment was a critical precursor of the American Revolution. Chief among the ideas of the American Enlightenment were the concepts of natural law, natural rights, consent of the governed, individualism, property rights, self-ownership, self-determination, liberalism, republicanism, and defense against corruption. A growing number of American colonists embraced these views and fostered an intellectual environment which led to a new sense of political and social identity. And within this, we actually have several different ideologies. Now, interestingly, at least as Wikipedia lays this out, and again, Wikipedia is not a perfect source. In fact, it's very left biased, but it's sort of an amalgamation. It is a hive mind developing a view of what something is. In this instance, a view of the American Revolution, which, yeah, on Wikipedia, it's pretty great. Check it out. John Locke's ideas on liberty influenced the political thinking behind the revolution, especially through his indirect influence on English writers such as John Trenchard, Thomas Gordon, and Benjamin Hoadley, whose political ideas had a strong influence on the American patriots. Locke is often referred to as the philosopher of the American Revolution, due to his work in the social construct and natural rights theories that underpinned the revolution's political ideology. Locke's two treatises of government, published in 1689, was especially influential. He argued that all humans were created equally free, and governments therefore needed the consent of the governed. In late 18th century America, belief was still widespread in equality by creation and rights by creation. So let me read this. The theory of the social contract influenced the belief among many of the founders that the right of the people to overthrow their leaders was one of the natural rights of man. Should those leaders betray the historic rights of Englishmen, the Americans heavily used Montesquieu's analysis of the wisdom of the balanced British Constitution, mixed government, in writing the state and national constitutions. Okay, I'm not going to be able to read you literally everything about what the revolution brought about, but it brought about something very important that leftists really don't like: the right of individualism and the consent of the governed, the right to overthrow your leaders when they become destructive to these ends. And what do they want to impose now? Ideological rule and authoritarianism. They want to control you. They do not believe you have individual rights. They say it as much. They will not celebrate a day in which humanity finally realized the spark was ignited, that we were free individuals that could decide for ourselves. There are limits, of course. There are laws. We must respect each other. But we will not be subjected to authoritarian rule. The consent of the governed grants us the government must have the consent of the governed. The left would like to impose one-party rule. The communists, the Marxists, the far leftists, they want to be the authority, the guiding hand which controls everything, and you will suffer beneath it. Your life will be miserable. Quite amazing how within this framework and this ideological revolution came the greatest country on the planet. Some would argue not the greatest, but I would say in many ways it is. Technologically, through wealth, through power, through a lot of really awful things we want to get rid of that we have. But we've truly become very, very powerful and just. Perfect? No, of course not. Only a fool would try to argue as much. But we are one of the best, if not the best, simply because we allow for amendments and we are built upon the consent of the governed. There are people who would conspire to take that right away from you. I don't mean some grand global conspiracy. I mean individuals who reject the ideology and would want to shut down such a great holiday. So again, I can't read for you every single bit of the ideological revolution, but republicanism is one of these. Don't let the modern colloquial understanding of these words cloud what these words really mean. They will say Republican is bad. They will say liberal is bad. Well, at the core, these are amazing ideas. We went from being ruled by divine providence to having conversations and debates over the best ways to improve things. And guess what? That was a major evolution of political ideology, which allowed us to become extremely effective, powerful, and just. And over time, the framework expanded upon, built upon, created equality under the law. What more could you ask for? Well, these people, their response is silly. This is what someone said to me. Quote, my family celebrates the monarchy because their form of government eventually led to the widespread adoption of democracy. That's what you sound like, my guy. No, I don't. I reject the monarchy. We have a government that can change, that can adapt, that can evolve, that will represent the people as the people's ideas change. The problem is, right now we're seeing communists try to destroy this. That is not necessarily the change I'm talking about. So long as we operate underneath this general idea of the consent of the governed, then we can always maintain civil rights and equality, etc., and we can expand and do things right. Just because you want power doesn't mean these ideas are bad. So I send it back to Colin Kaepernick. I can certainly respect that the creation of this nation, slavery existed, and it was a horrifying, horrifying thing. And I don't think it's as simple as just saying you can forget about it. I totally understand the history that comes from it. But my family had literally nothing and were oppressed under, the format, how this country functioned for a while too. And while it's not one for one, I'm not going to hold a grudge. Colin, you're super rich. You've had a great life. So have I. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to fight to make things better. I'm going to respect the country for what it is and the things they've given me and my family. Maybe it won't be perfect, but we'll keep fighting to keep making things better, and that I can accept. Stick around. A couple more segments coming your way in just a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.